and welcome to another episode of The Nice Knit, a podcast where we talk about knitting, and it's nice. Today on the podcast, we are talking about the gray sweater, which is behind me, another work in progress sweater, which I've made a little bit of progress on, and then some socks. So without further ado, let's dive right in. We're going to do the podcast just a little bit backwards today. Instead of starting with my finished object, which is behind me, I'm actually going to start with some works in progress that I have going on right now, starting with my mom's sweater that I am making her for her birthday. However, her birthday's already passed, so she'll probably get it by Christmas. But I have made just a little bit of progress on this. After I finished the gray sweater, I decided just to see, if I could, while Mom was with me, because I was at her house, if I could get the sleeves the length that I wanted them to, or the yoke, the length that I wanted it, so that I could split for the sleeves while she was there, so I could put it on her body and made sure it fit. So I have made just a little bit of progress on this sweater, which is just a improvised sweater, although I will say it's a basic raglan. And so I really am designing it based off of the gray sweater, just because I like the way that this sweater was designed, and we'll talk about that a little later. But I'm not really technically following any pattern. I just used the general construction of the gray sweater. But I haven't made much progress, but I have officially split for the sleeves. So that's always really exciting when you get the yoke done. I feel like the yoke for me is the most brain intensive part. Now we just have the mindless stuff left, knitting the body and knitting each of the sleeves. And Mom loves a fairly tight fitted straight sleeve with no cuff. If you remember or were here for the discussion on my Serene sweater, which if you haven't heard about the Serene sweater, you're probably new here and you maybe want to consider subscribing. However, the Serene sweater is just knit in stockinette, and then it just rolls at the end because it's just bound off. There's no ribbing. So that's probably what I'm going to do for this sweater as well. Same for the hemline. I'm not going to do any ribbing. I will probably just bind it off and let it roll because she seems to really like that look. But yeah, that's the update on my mom's sweater. Up next is socks. Now, if you've been here since the beginning of the year or have recently gone back and watched some of those earlier videos, you may know that my goal this year was to knit 12 pairs of socks. And the real goal was to knit a pair of socks every single month. I got through January confidently. I knit a pair of socks in January, very exciting. February, I started knitting a pair of socks, but I started doing it with a different sock pattern and a smaller needle size than I had originally used on the 2 pairs of socks I had knit prior, and I still have not finished those socks. I did not enjoy the process, and at the time I couldn't figure out why. A little bit after that, I had the realization that I am just an extremely tight knitter, so I knit very tightly, and so a smaller needle size may work for somebody who is a little bit looser of a knitter, but since I'm such a tight knitter, it actually made an incredibly dense fabric that was not enjoyable to work with. It was very tight on my hands, it was hard to knit, and I was using a very small needle size. It might have been a 1, but I don't know if it was a 1, like a size 1, or a 1 millimeter. 1 millimeter seems really small, so it was probably a size 1. But I did not enjoy the process. It's nothing against that pattern that I was using. I don't even remember what pattern I was using at the time. And I plan to go back and re-knit that pattern, but instead of using the needle size recommended by the pattern, I am going to use the needle size that I used when I knit the One Sock by Kate Atherley, which is a larger needle size. And I'm still debating whether or not I'm going to finish those socks or frog them. I've got, I believe, the cuff and a good portion of the leg done on both socks. I'm knitting them 2 at a time on separate needles. And so it feels kind of icky to rip them back. So I have 2 options, which I'm going to explore. I'm probably going to make a frog or finish video later. So I'm going to explore it more there. But my 2 options are really to frog it as it is right now, restart with the larger needle size and go from there. Or I could just size up my needles, possibly, and just have a tighter cuff, and then the rest of the sock will be a little bit looser of a gauge. I haven't decided what I want to do, and nothing says I can't try the second option and then frog it if I don't like it. But that's for future Laramie to figure out. But that being said, what I decided to do, instead of worrying about those socks, because I really wanted to get back into the groove of knitting socks, because I actually enjoy sock knitting and I love wearing knitted socks, I decided just to start a new pair of socks on the original One Sock by Kate Atherley pattern that I know that I really enjoy knitting, and go from there. So what I picked up was, and by picked up, I mean I already had this in my stash because it's Knit and Crochet brand, which was a Joann's brand. And this is Sock Star in the colorway Carnival Splash Stripe. So that's what that looks like. It's a very fun sock yarn. And so I have been knitting, and I started this like on Monday, so it's been pretty fast progress, myself a pair of funky socks. So these are my funky socks that I am knitting basically to remind myself why I like knitting socks. I have several more inches on the foot to go, and I need to do the toe, but I got through the heel, just a heel flap and gusset. The pattern is super fun. I didn't worry about matching, the pattern up perfectly, but I really enjoyed this, and I'm reminded why I like sock knitting again, and it makes me really want to go back and address those other socks now that I know that I still enjoy sock knitting. It was just that particular pair of socks with that particular needle gauge that I was struggling with. And so I'm working on that, but I'm in the foot of the sock, which is kind of monotonous because you're just knitting stockinette. And so what I did to break the monotony was cast on, and this is kind of a mess, was cast on another pair of socks in, again, this is Knit and Crochet Sock Star, but this is Dragon Fruit Splash Stripe. And so that's what that looks like. And I am knitting 2 socks, again, 2 at a time on separate needles. And I haven't got very far, and you can see I had some yarn vomit when I found the center pole. But yeah, so I'm working on these. These socks I'm knitting in a slightly larger size. I may give them to a friend. I just wanted to try to knit a sock that wasn't for me. So we'll see who ends up with those socks, or if I just decide I want like a really loose sock. But yeah, I have actually returned to sock knitting. I don't think I'm going to meet my goal of 12 socks this year. However, it is reassuring to knit some socks and actually enjoy it again, because I was really discouraged when I was knitting that other pair of socks and was like, this isn't fun. I thought I liked sock knitting. Turns out I do. I just need to remember that I knit very tightly. And so if you add that with really teeny tiny needles, then it's going to be an uncomfortable process. But that is really like the main works in progress that I have been actively working on. I have been trying to get through my stash of works in progress over the last month. If you haven't been around, you may not know, I got hurt, and so I'm kind of grounded. And what I mean by that is I can't ride my horse. So I'm spending a lot of time this summer knitting. And so while I did cast on socks, and that is a new cast on, I'm kind of limiting my new cast ons, and I'm just trying to focus on my works in progress. But sometimes when you're just knitting, stockinette in the body of 3 or 4 sweaters, it's okay to have a little break and knit some socks. And so that is really the update there. But what I really wanted to make this video about, and what I really wanted to talk about today, is the Grace sweater. So let me get situated so that you can see and I can move around a little bit more. Let me check framing as well. Hopefully you can see both me and Justine wearing my beautiful Grace sweater. So this is the Grace sweater. I started knitting this either in January or February. This plant. Either in January or February, and this is the Adorable Grace sweater by Dorothy of Adorable Knits, and I love this sweater pattern. I'm kind of obsessed with it. I actually made a video, when I first started knitting this sweater, about how obsessed I am with the sweater pattern. That has not changed. Yes, I've had some struggles with it, but they were struggles entirely of my own making, and had I just trusted the designer and gone with what the designer had originally intended, I wouldn't have had any issues. So I want to talk through, kind of do a review of this pattern, I mean, if I was giving it a star rating, it would be 5 out of 5 stars because I'm obsessed with this pattern. I do think it was incredibly well written. And if you're looking for just a simple raglan sweater and maybe you're new to sweater knitting, this is where I would turn you to. This is where I recommend you start. Dorothy does an amazing job. And let's see how many times I can say amazing and obsessed in this video. But she does an amazing job breaking down techniques like short row shaping. And like the folded over collar, she talks you through really well. All of the things. So I want to talk through, I'm not going to give everything away because this is a paid pattern and I really think you should go and support the designer if you're interested in knitting a sweater like this. But I'm just going to talk through some design elements that I really like. First and foremost is this rolled collar. And I believe there is a row or a couple of rows of double knitting here in order to make the collar lay a little flatter as opposed to being really poofy, which I really like. When she talks you through how to fold over the collar, she does it in a very intuitive way. And I feel like even though I already had a good grasp on how to fold over a collar and knit it in so I didn't have to sew it in later, I feel like it was even more intuitive than what I had originally thought. But where this pattern really started to shine for me was in the short row shaping. I had done short row shaping before. I had knit at least a couple of sweater yokes with the German short row technique, but I did not understand exactly how it worked, and I was very confused. I felt like I was following the pattern and like I had to read every single line multiple times to understand what I needed to do, and I made a lot of mistakes because I didn't understand the process of German short rows. But when I knit this sweater, the way Dorothy breaks it down, it could just be the way my brain works too, but it like clicked. I just went, oh, I get it now. Now I understand how German short rows work. I get the logic behind them. I understand how to do it. I could go and knit an improvised sweater like I did with my mom's sweater using the German short row technique. Even though I don't have the same number of stitches, I can still successfully complete it without a whole lot of confusion because of the way that she explains it. And really the gist is she has you break your yarn and then move over to the start of German short rows instead of starting them in the middle. And I don't know why this made such a big difference in my brain. And I feel like I've talked about this on a YouTube video before. It was probably the one where I'm telling you that I'm obsessed with this pattern, but it made sense. And I feel like this is the first time that I've knit German short rows and actually felt like I knew what I was doing. And ever since then, any pattern that I pick up, regardless of how the designer talks through it, I can understand it because I had the foundation of understanding how this sweater was constructed. The length of the body, I don't know if I knitted it to the length that the designer recommended or not, but I did block it halfway through to kind of see how far my yarn would stretch, and then I continued knitting. I had originally knit a shorter hemline and then bound off using just a regular bind off, which did not work. If you want to learn more about that process, I'll link the video up here or down below where I talk more about that. But that was the first heartbreak, and it wasn't, or heartache, I should say, and it wasn't the designer's fault because this is how the designer told you to do it. The designer told you to knit 4 inches here, and she also told you to do the Italian bind off. However, I didn't do either of those things. I only knit like 1.5 inches, and I did not do an Italian bind off. So at the end of the day, you know, it was a mess of my own making that I then had to go and fix. But once I fixed it, it was perfect, and it's almost like the designer knew exactly what she was doing when she designed this. When it comes to the sleeves, I love the way she has you pick up the sleeves. This is the cleanest armpit I have ever knit. I've actually knit a fair few armpits, some that will never see the light of day because I frogged them, but this is an impressive armpit. I always have these huge gaps and holes in the corner as you're picking up stitches, and I don't have them here because Dorothy is a genius and she has a technique for that, and I will now forever use it on everything I ever do, even if the designer doesn't tell me to. But I'm just chuffed with how clean those armpits look. Like, you can hardly even tell where the line is where I picked up the stitches for the sleeves. How she has you do the rapid decrease at the cuff is beautiful. The only thing that I didn't follow Dorothy's like version of was the Italian bind off. She does it in like 4 steps where Petite Knit does it in 2. And for some reason, the way the Petite Knit video, I can link that below too, explains the Italian bind off made more sense to my brain. However, I think that's just a my brain thing because I think everything else that Dorothy has done is incredibly easy to follow. So I imagine it was just, you know, some people learn things different ways. And so if you have watched the Petite Knit Italian bind off and you're still struggling with it, maybe Dorothy's video showing you how to do an Italian bind off is more your speed. But yeah, overall, very thrilled with this sweater. And lesson learned, sometimes it's okay to branch out and try to experiment and make it your own. But sometimes it's okay to like do what the designer is saying. And I'm speaking to myself here because I thought I needed to like modify and fix and change, when in reality, Dorothy had already put all of the work in to make this a beautiful sweater. And had I just followed her from the beginning when doing this hemline here, I would have had much better luck. Now, I probably just got super lucky, but when I knitted the sleeves, I knitted it exactly to her specifications before I started doing my 1x1 rib. And I feel like it doesn't always work out where you get the perfect length of sleeve. When you do that, depending on what kind of yarn you're using, I'm not using the yarn recommended by the pattern, but it worked out. It like literally perfectly. It stretched exactly 2 inches. It was a 24-inch sleeve from the armpit and is now a 26-inch sleeve from the armpit, which is perfect for what I need it for. Now, there's not much I would change about this sweater, and there's nothing that is going to prevent me from wearing this sweater other than the fact that it is warm. Just very warm. But if I were going to change anything about the sweater, the 2 things that I would consider changing if re-knitting the sweater with this exact yarn in this exact size is I would probably knit the neckline just a little bit wider. Again, this could be a factor because I am a tight knitter, but the neck is just a little bit tighter than what I would like it. I think it probably looks pretty close to what the pattern shows. I just didn't realize that that was going to be a little bit of a sensory thing for me. I also think it will relax as I wear it, and it's not super tight, like it's not bothersome tight. I can easily get it over my head, but I wouldn't mind if it sat a little bit wider. Another thing to note is the short rows, and it could be because of where that neckline is. The short rows has it where the back is only about 1 inch taller than the front. And if I were going with this exact neckline, like I wasn't changing anything about what needle I used to knit the 1x1 rib, how I folded it over, I would probably want to do some extra short row shaping on the back just to lift this back up a little bit more. That is just something for like my anatomy that I think would help so that the front of the neckline isn't pushing so much on my throat. But again, this is very nitpicky. I had to like really think of things that I would change when I was going through this, but there's always something that you can improve. And so those are the things that I would change if I were gonna reknit this sweater, which I might. I almost impulse cast it onto another one this like second I finished this, but I didn't. I controlled myself. The other thing that I would change if I were to knit this again is I may knit like a 1/2 inch to 1 inch more on the sleeves, just so if I want them a little longer, I can have them. However, I'm like, I wouldn't want them any shorter. I would be okay with them just 1 inch longer, but I don't need them 1 inch longer, if that makes sense. Like I'm happy where they're at, but I wouldn't be mad if it was a little longer as well. But I wouldn't want much longer because then I think it would be too much fabric. I really like a sweater, especially one that I'm wearing to work, where I'm teaching and moving around a lot, to really hit me right at the wrist. And I hate it. I hate it when sweaters slide down on my hands and like get in my way, which that wouldn't really be an issue when you've got this tight of a cuff. But I wouldn't mind allowing the puff to be just there a little bit more, which is what that extra inch or 1/2 inch would do for this sweater. But that's it. That is all I would change. If I could go back and change my process, I would just follow the designer to a T. and stop trying to improve things, because what do I know, right? But we live, we learn, and I love this sweater. So now that I've talked about it, I want to show you the yarn, and then I'm going to put the sweater on for you so you can see how it fits on my body rather than on Justine's, dress form body. But give me 1 second. Let me find the yarn. Let's see. I think I have it down here. Yeah. Okay, so what we have here is Eddie Bauer Woolpaca. This is in the color Blue Spruce. It took me, I used 4 skeins of this yarn of 100 grams each, 254 meters, 277 yards, paired with 1 strand of Surrey Stratus, which is alpaca and nylon, in the color Mint. So these two together, I used about 4 balls of this as well, equals 1 Grace sweater. I have actually both of these yarns in black, and I think I have exactly 4 balls of both. So there's a chance I will make another one of these in black, but I'm gonna try to get my other sweaters done first before I impulse cast on this. I also want to wear it at work. Having 1 really warm sweater for work is good, but if it's only something that I can only wear on like the coldest days, or if I'm like not being very active, I may not need another sweater with this dense of fabric, so I may do something else with that yarn. But that was my impulse cast on. But let me pause you and try on this sweater and show you what it looks like. All right, folks, this is it. This is the Serene sweater. I'm very excited to have this sweater complete. And even more than that, I'm excited that this is a sweater that when I put it on, it fits me exactly how I envisioned it fitting. Like when I made the Serene sweater, like I liked it. The pattern is beautiful. Like the sweater itself is beautiful. But when I put it on, I didn't feel like it was something I wanted to wear long term. It didn't feel like a comfortable sweater the way that like a store-bought sweater that just happens to fit you perfectly feels. I liked it. I could recognize that it was beautiful, but it just wasn't me, which is why I gave it to my mom. But this sweater, this is the first sweater that I've made that, first of all, it fit exactly how I envisioned it to fit. And when I put it on, it is just like it fits my body exactly the way that I want it to fit my body. The sleeves are a great length, especially for me. My mom, I always compare myself to my mom because I know her style. I probably know her style the best out of everybody else who's not me. And she likes really long sleeves, but I like a short sleeve. Like I like it, it doesn't even have to go all the way to cover my hand. Especially when I'm teaching, I usually do one of these numbers. And if you have a sweater that's super long, it gets kind of bulky, but this is how I generally like to wear my sweaters. Or, if I'm a little chilly, I will pull this down. But really, I don't need it farther down than that. I also expect this neckline to relax a little bit over time, which will allow everything to shift down a little bit more, but hopefully not much more, because this is kind of where I want to have it. This is a very fuzzy sweater. I don't know if you can see all the fuzzes happening here, but it's very fuzzy, but it fits me perfectly. There's not much to say, to be honest, other than I don't like cold weather, but I'm actually excited for it to be cold enough to wear this sweater. But yeah, I don't know what else to say. I don't know how to style this for you other than this is how I'll wear it. I usually wear high-waisted pants, so I love a good crop. The smallest part of the sweater hits me right where I want it to hit me. I can't believe that I used these 2 hands to make this. Okay, I'm gonna stop talking. I'm gonna let you go, but thank you for watching. Please let me know what you are currently working on so I can live vicariously through you, because I only have 2 hands and I can only knit one thing at a time. So tell me what you're working on. If you're crocheting, tell me what you're crocheting. If you happen to sew, what are you sewing? Otherwise, I hope you have a wonderful day. If you liked this video, please consider giving it a like. It means a lot to me. I get really excited every time I see a like on a video. And then finally, if you are new here and have not subscribed, but you want to hang out more, please consider subscribing. Otherwise, have a good one, and I will hopefully see you in the next video. Bye!